Cúigno.
Yeah, thank you, Cathaoirleach. To quote Yates, everything has changed utterly. We're not quite sure what Thursday's vote is going to give birth to. I see a writer in the Irish Times letters page today finished it off by saying a terrible future is born. That remains to be seen. But I would certainly be very apprehensive about the consequences of Thursday's vote. I'm genuinely sad about the outcome of the referendum. As Democrats, of course, we accept the decision of the British people, but I think most of us here in this House are very disappointed with the recent turn of events. Like many people, I strongly believe in the values and ideals of the European Union. For all its faults, and there are many, the EU has led to unprecedented peace and stability in Europe since the Second World War. Among other things, it has ensured rights for workers, equal pay for women in society, and many, many other things as well. Over the years, the EU has achieved that. We live in a very uncertain world, economically, and in many other ways as well. We have states to the south of Europe that are simply not functioning, and the threat posed by Russia to the east cannot be underestimated. International terrorism threatens our fundamental way of life. The rise of the extreme right and extreme left movements puts the centre under pressure, and extremism and hatred pose real challenges for our liberal democracies. This vote was divisive in many ways. It was divisive for the United Kingdom and for the EU, and has the potential to destroy unity and consensus at a European level. The Leave campaign was ugly and nasty. It was negative and angry. This ignorance and intolerance is also on the rise in other EU states. Old prejudices are being stoked up. Fundamental or extreme nationalism is on the rise. As a result, Eurosceptic parties are growing in Europe. Such dangerous populism poses a real risk to liberal democratic values when reason and common sense are discarded and the politics of protest takes over. Of course, the EU institutions have questions to answer in this regard. Even if the vote was to remain, serious soul-searching would have been required. There is a growing disillusionment with the so-called political establishment, the elite, the experts. The EU faces many challenges for sure. The 2008 financial crisis and banking crisis still being played out, a resurgent Russia posing a real threat, and an influx of immigrants. The citizens of the EU do not believe the institutions are handling these crises well at all. The disconnect between the EU institutions and EU citizens is a real issue. It is not just a question of poor communication, although that is a question that needs to be addressed. The EU is perceived as becoming increasingly remote. It has an alienating style and can be seen as autocratic or high-handed. The view is that citizens are talked down to rather than talked to. Even the meeting of the 6 foreign ministers of the Founding Fathers over the weekend was an illustration of that. So this democratic deficit needs to be addressed. What is needed now is an ongoing programme of constructive reform of the European Union. Many of us now long to have the patriotic visionaries of those who founded the EU. As Micheál Martin said this morning, and indeed in contributions last week, the founding fathers of the European Union, or the EEC, were patriotic. And also, I think the generation that was led by Jacques Delors, the President of the European Commission, Francois Mitterrand or Helmut Kohl, they were visionaries. They were leaders with a vision and did have a real sense of solidarity. It seems that today the major political figures of the European Union are reverting wholeheartedly to national self-interest, and that is regrettable. It is also interesting to see that, by and large, young people supported the Remain side in the UK vote. Their sense of idealism needs to be encouraged and supported. The EU is a bit more than a partnership of nation-states, but neither should it be a federal superstate. Any further integration or expansion proposed by the EU will have to be clearly justified and fully explained to the citizens of the European Union. So where do we go from here? Ireland has a unique relationship with the UK economically, culturally and socially. We need to preserve this unique relationship in the negotiations that will now follow. Ireland needs to be at the centre of these negotiations, given our unique relationship with the UK. The exit of the UK will have more of an impact on Ireland than any other EU state. We need to be calm, reasoned and rational to protect our national self-interest, but also to work closely with other EU member states to ensure the survival of the Union and all that it stands for. Cathaoirleach, I'm conscious that my time is running out, but just to say to the Minister of State here today that we are all wearing the green jersey, and certainly on this side of the House we will be fully supportive of the efforts to protect our national interest and to get the best possible outcome from the negotiations which will follow. One final point, Cathaoirleach. I think it is very regrettable that a huge amount of time, effort and resources will now have to be expended by government and our public administration generally in trying to sort out all these issues over the next 2 years. This is unfortunate and will slow down policy making in many important areas of Irish life. But be that as it may, we are where we are and we need to pick ourselves up and do what we have to do to protect the interests of this country. Thank you.